Imagine this. You walk into a factory. The machines are humming, forklifts are moving, workers are busy, and everything looks normal. But hidden inside this normal day are dozens of environmental impacts quietly happening every second. Some are small, some are huge. And some, if ignored, can destroy ecosystems, cause legal penalties, or permanently damage your company's reputation. This is why identifying significant environmental aspects, or SEA, is one of the most powerful responsibilities of any HSE professional. And today I'm going to break it down so simply that even a complete beginner will understand it clearly. Welcome to Workplace HSE Explained. In this 4-part masterclass, you will learn exactly how to identify environmental aspects, evaluate their impacts, score them, and determine which ones are truly significant. By the end of this series, you will be able to perform an SEA assessment confidently in any industry. So let's begin with the basics. First, what is an environmental aspect? In simple words, it is anything your organization does that interacts with the environment. If your activity releases something, consumes something, changes something, or affects something in nature, that activity has an environmental aspect. For example, running a diesel generator releases emissions. That's an aspect. Using water for cooling consumes a natural resource. That's an aspect. Storing chemicals creates a risk of spills. That's an aspect. Every process, every machine, every movement has at least one environmental aspect. Now, what is an environmental impact? It is the change that happens in the environment because of that aspect. If the generator releases emissions, the impact is air pollution. If water is consumed, the impact is depletion of natural resources. If chemicals spill, the impact is soil contamination. Aspect is the cause. Impact is the effect. In Part 1, your goal is to understand the foundation. Before identifying significant aspects, you must first identify all aspects. And the easiest way to do this is by breaking your organization into activities. Think of activities like production, maintenance, transportation, storage, waste handling, office operations, and so on. For each activity, ask one simple question. Does this activity interact with the environment in any way? If the answer is yes, you have found an aspect. To make this even simpler, use 5 categories: emissions to air, releases to water, releases to land, resource consumption, and waste generation. If an activity fits any of these categories, it has an environmental aspect. In Part 2, we will go deeper and identify aspects step by step, using real examples from manufacturing, construction, and office environments. This is just the beginning. Stay with me through all 4 parts, because by the end, you will master SEA like a pro. Welcome back to Workplace HSE Explained. In Part 1, you learned the foundation of environmental aspects and impacts. Now, in Part 2, we move into the practical, step-by-step method to identify environmental aspects in any workplace. This is where beginners often get confused, but I promise you, by the end of this part, you will be able to identify aspects with complete clarity. The first step is process mapping. Imagine you are walking through your facility with a camera. Every activity you record becomes a process step. For example, receiving raw materials, storing them, transporting them, using them in production, maintaining equipment, cleaning floors, and disposing waste. Each step has at least one environmental interaction. So your job is to list all activities first. Without this list, you will miss aspects. The second step is to identify inputs and outputs of each activity. Inputs include electricity, fuel, water, chemicals, packaging, and raw materials. Outputs include emissions, wastewater, noise, heat, waste, leaks, spills, and even vibrations. If something enters or leaves the process, it is connected to an environmental aspect. For example, if a boiler uses diesel, the input is fuel and the output is flue gas emissions. If a machine uses coolant, the input is chemical and the output is hazardous waste. This simple input-output thinking makes aspect identification extremely easy. A third step is to categorize aspects. Use the 5 universal categories: emissions to air, releases to water, releases to land, resource consumption, and waste generation. Every aspect fits into one of these. For example, welding fumes fall under emissions to air. Wastewater from cleaning falls under releases to water. Scrap metal falls under waste generation. Diesel consumption falls under resource consumption. Chemical spills fall under releases to land. Categorizing helps you stay organized and ensures you don't miss anything. The fourth step is to consider abnormal and emergency conditions. Many beginners only identify aspects during normal operations, but ISO 14001 requires you to consider abnormal situations like machine breakdowns, power failures, maintenance activities, and emergency events like fires or chemical spills. For example, during maintenance, oil leakage is possible. During a power failure, generators may run. During emergencies, hazardous substances may escape. These aspects are often the most significant, so never ignore them. The fifth step is documentation. Create a simple table with columns for activity, aspect, impact, category, and condition. This table becomes your environmental aspect register. In Part 3, we will learn how to evaluate these aspects and determine which ones are truly significant. Welcome to Part 3 of this masterclass. Now that you know how to identify environmental aspects, the next step is evaluating their impacts. This is where we decide which aspects are minor and which ones are significant. Many organizations struggle here, but I will make it simple and practical. The first step in evaluation is understanding impact severity. Severity means how serious the environmental damage could be if the aspect occurs. For example, a minor paper waste has low severity, but a chemical spill has high severity. Air emissions from a small compressor may be low severity, but emissions from a large boiler may be high. Severity is always linked to the potential harm to air, water, land, biodiversity, or human health. The second step is understanding frequency. Frequency means how often the aspect occurs. If something happens daily, it has high frequency. If it happens once a year, it has low frequency. For example, electricity consumption happens continuously, so it has high frequency. Chemical spills may be rare, so they have low frequency, but even rare events can be significant if severity is high. The third step is legal and regulatory requirements. If an aspect is controlled by law, it automatically becomes important. For example, hazardous waste disposal, air emissions, wastewater discharge, and chemical storage all have strict legal requirements. If your aspect violates any regulation, its significance increases immediately. The fourth step is stakeholder concern. Sometimes an aspect becomes significant because people care about it. For example, noise near residential areas, odor from food factories, dust from construction sites, or water usage in drought-prone regions. Even if severity is moderate, stakeholder pressure can make the aspect significant. The fifth step is scoring. Most organizations use a scoring matrix. For example, severity is scored from 1 to 5, frequency from 1 to 5, legal requirement as 1 or 5, and stakeholder concern as 1 or 5. Multiply or add these values to get a total score. If the score crosses a threshold, the aspect becomes significant. For example, if severity is 5, frequency is 4, legal requirement is 5, and stakeholder concern is 3, the total score is high enough to classify it as significant. The sixth step is ranking. Once you score all aspects, rank them from highest to lowest. The top items are your significant environmental aspects. These require controls, monitoring, objectives, and improvement plans. In Part 4, we will learn how to manage SEAs and close this masterclass with a powerful outro. Welcome to the final part of this masterclass. You now know how to identify aspects, categorize them, evaluate impacts, and score significance. In Part 4, we focus on what happens after an aspect becomes significant. This is where real environmental management begins. The first step is implementing controls. Controls can be engineering controls, administrative controls, or operational controls. For example, installing scrubbers on boilers, using spill containment trays, improving wastewater treatment, switching to energy-efficient equipment, or reducing hazardous chemical usage. Controls reduce severity, frequency, or both. The second step is monitoring. Every significant aspect must be monitored regularly. For example, air emissions must be measured, wastewater must be tested, waste quantities must be tracked, and resource consumption must be recorded. Monitoring ensures that controls are working and that impacts are under control. The third step is setting objectives and targets. ISO 14001 requires organizations to set environmental objectives based on significant aspects. For example, reducing diesel consumption by 10%, lowering waste generation by 15%, improving recycling rates, or reducing emissions. Objectives must be measurable, achievable, and linked to SEA. The fourth step is training. Workers must understand environmental aspects and their responsibilities. For example, operators must know how to prevent spills, maintenance teams must know how to handle waste oil, and supervisors must know how to respond to emergencies. Training ensures that everyone contributes to environmental protection. The fifth step is emergency preparedness. Significant aspects often include emergency risks, so organizations must prepare for spills, leaks, fires, and equipment failures. This includes emergency plans, drills, spill kits, alarms, and communication procedures. Preparedness reduces impact severity dramatically. The sixth step is continual improvement. Environmental management is not a one-time activity. You must review aspects annually, update scores, improve controls, and adopt new technologies. This ensures your environmental performance keeps improving year after year. And now, the outro. You have completed a full masterclass on identifying significant environmental aspects. Whether you are a beginner or an experienced HSE professional, mastering SEA gives you the power to protect the environment, comply with laws, and build a responsible organization. If you found this series valuable, like, share, and subscribe to Workplace HSE Explained. Your support helps us create more powerful educational content.